What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing something a bit different. As you can see, I'm working on my 1997 Trailex CT8045 all aluminum trailer. This thing is great because back when they made the CT8045, it weighs less than 1,000 pounds. So for instance, if you have like a Ford Explorer Sport like we do, has a maximum tow rating of 5,000 pounds, I can't tow a steel trailer and pretty much any car on top of it because steel trailers weigh 25 to 103,000 pounds, and most cars are certainly over 3,000 pounds. So right there, you've blown past the tow limit on your vehicle. This trailer is great because it weighs less than 1,000 pounds, at 950 pounds. You can put, a 3,000 pound, 3,500 pound Corvette on there, and you can still tow your trailer. So I love this trailer. I bought it from previous owner about a year ago. The guy did not take care of it. Everything was rusted so bad, so, and I'll show you here in a minute, that I had to pretty much get a cutoff wheel to cut off almost every single nut and bolt on this entire thing, or when using the impact gun, it just sheared the bolts because they were, again, 26 years old, completely rusty. The nuts had just rusted to the bolts and there was no getting them off. With penetrating oil, I tried heat. So it was a pain in the butt. I am like 90% done now restoring this thing. I'll give you guys a kind of overview here in a minute. What we're gonna do today is, and I wanted to share with you on all of you on YouTube, in case you're doing the same thing, is how to replace your leaf spring suspension. I'm also gonna be putting brand new brakes in the trailer. Then lastly, we're putting brand new hubs on. I'm doing this all new hardware, all new suspension and braking components, just because I want it to be right, I want it to be safe, and hopefully we can use this thing next week. So before I dive into it, let me kind of walk over what I have here laid out in front of us. I'll kind of share with you some of the tools that I used to get it apart, because I'm not going to show that on camera, because taking it apart should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'll kind of share with you some of the chaos that I went through, and then I'll walk you through some of the tools, the parts, etc. So let me get back up, and let's take a quick tour. All right, so I've already put a lot of time into this trailer. As you can see, these are actually the the plates that you would drive your car on. There's 3 on each side. It's open to the middle just to keep the whole thing light. You'll notice all of this is new hardware. I can't fix some of the cosmetic painting stuff because, to be blunt, I'm not going to go as crazy as to paint the entire thing as aluminum. It's not going to rust. So the previous owner painted it. I wish he had just left it the bare aluminum, but here we are. But again, I got the winch installed. Again, this is a very old winch, but it still works. It actually comes like a Bluetooth, or not a Bluetooth, but a radio control remote for in and out, but all new hardware, painted the beam for that. This is an electronic jack, so it goes up and down electrically, all grade 8 bolts on everything that's kind of important. And what you'll see over here too is on the suspension, I use grade 8 bolts also, but all new D-rings installed there, all new hardware throughout this. Again, all this stuff's new hardware. Every cross member's got new nut and bolt. Everything on here is also a lock washer, or a lock nut, by the way, so it's not coming off. That's how they were built from the factory. I probably spent a few $100 with Trailex buying all new hardware components, to the extent that I had to buy their specialty hardware. So again, this thing's not going anywhere. But we have all new D-rings on, and I already have one side of the suspension done. You'll see how nice this looks. I'll show you the rusty stuff here in a minute from the when I took it apart, but all new brakes behind the hubs. I've got the Bearing Buddies from Dexter. I think it is the company that sells them, or maybe it's just Bearing Buddies, the company, but all new caps and everything. I did pre-buy the hubs with the bearings pre-packed. If you guys don't know how to pack bearings, it's actually really easy to do, but for a couple extra bucks, you can buy them pre-packed, and it's really nice. But you'll see, here's the stuff I took off. So all of this stuff was just so rusty. I mean, it didn't budge. With the impact gun, there's the old brakes down there. I mean, here are the old hubs, a lot of the old bolts. It was just nasty. So, if you're doing any sort of trailer restoration, this stuff really doesn't cost that much, honestly. With a new suspension and the U-bolts, again, the U-bolts are, here, I'll zoom in a little bit. The U-bolts are those things that hold it to the axle there. But for brand new suspension, which came with the U-bolts, so it came with the leaf springs, the shackles, the shackle nuts, and the U-bolts, and hardware to install that, it was like, I think $185. Brakes, I think, were like, $150 to $180, and the hubs were like $150. So, maybe it's $500 to replace all those components, but they're all, like, in my opinion, related to safety. So spend the money, guys, do it right. Honestly, it's a whole lot easier to install new components than install old, rusty components, okay? All right, let me walk you through what's in front of me here. Then we're gonna get going because I have a busy day. All right, so if you're taking apart your trailer, obviously you want to have an impact gun. If you don't have an impact gun, you're in for a lot of fun, to be honest. You might want to go out and just buy yourself an impact gun. Easy tools make an easy life. What you will probably find, like me, is though if you have an old trailer, this is either going to shear the bolts off, it's not going to budge the bolts, even with heat or oil, or in my case, the brakes, for instance, the bolts are like kind of threaded on one side. The impact gun just stripped through those threads and the whole unit was just spinning. If that's the case, you want to get yourself a nice cutoff wheel. I'm not going to lie, this thing did a lot of work. I think I cut through, I think I said at the beginning of the video, like 300 nuts and bolts. Maybe I was exaggerating, but almost all of these 16 nuts on my brakes. I think I had to cut through 12 of them with the cutoff wheel, just to get the old brakes off. I actually had to cut through the half-inch thick steel U-bolts to get the suspension off. So cutoff wheel, definitely your friend. Honestly, again, if you're in my position and you're taking apart a trailer and that's why you're watching this, guys, don't waste the time trying. If the impact gun's not working, don't go out and get breaker bars and everything else. Just cut off the nut and bolt and buy new hardware. The cutoff wheel actually works pretty quickly, even to the half-inch thick steel. Just cut it off. Start fresh, start clean. You'll thank me later. So what do we have today? We have our new leaf spring suspension. We've got our shackle bolts here. Again, if you don't know anything about trailers, shackle bolts are specialty bolts. You can see they have these little grooves here on the side. I think these are 9/16" thick. Some of your trailers may be different, but ultimately you have a smooth shaft that goes through the smooth section of the collars here. And you want that running on the smooth part of the bolt, hence why these are specialty bolts. They are just thick enough to go through either side of this and not like kind of scratch up the plastic collars on the inside. So we have our new leaf spring suspension. We do have our new U-bolts and all of our hardware, inclusive of, they come with locking washers here. So you'll want to have that ready to rock and roll. If you're getting new brakes, some of the brake systems don't come with new hardware. I actually had to special order these nuts. These are all, again, not nylock locking nuts, but because of the sizes, I had to special order them. They weren't available like Home Depot, for instance. Walking down here quickly, we have our brand new brakes. There are left and right brakes. Make sure you know the difference. Left hand goes on the driver's side, right hand goes on the passenger side. These go at the bottom, okay, because as the electricity increases, it pushes it over. That's how your trailer brakes. But there is left and right brakes. I already have the right hand brakes installed on that side. Make sure you know your brakes. I have brand new hubs and all new, freshly repacked wheel bearings. Again, for a couple extra bucks, you can just buy them pre-packed. I am going to put more bearing grease in there, which I'll show you in a minute. And then coming down here, when you're taking apart your trailer, make sure you save your old cotter pins, unless you have a bunch of cotter pins laying around. You're going to need the washers from inside the wheel bearing. Just clean those off. You're going to need your castle nuts. You're going to reuse those, clean those off. And then, again, I have bearing buddies on my trailer. It came with it. These just help to grease it. They have a little connection there on the inside. If you have a grease gun, it makes greasing the bearings easy later on. And then I have brand new hardware to install my leaf spring suspension here, and all new lock nuts. These lock nuts are awesome because how you install the suspension is you don't necessarily tighten everything down super tight like you want to. These bolts are lock nuts. They do not, they will not back off because of vibration. They're coated with like a metal kind of like nylon coating on the threads. So they're actually very hard to put. They're actually really hard to put on also, which is nice. So you want to make sure the suspension can move. Okay, it's got to move. It's got to oscillate left and right. That's why it's built the way that it's built. So when you're tightening these things down, and I'll show you this, you don't make them tight as heck. All right, you kind of make them snug. You back them off a quarter of a turn, and you let them rock. All right, that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be able to move. The only other thing I will say is make sure you replace the exact components that your suspension came with on your trailer. I bought a whole new suspension kit. It came with this. It came with all of this. The second thing I'll say when you're ordering this is you have to know your trailer. You have to know what size axles you have. So I had 3,500 pound tandem axles, okay, and my leaf spring spring eye holes are 25 1/4 inches apart. So what do I mean by that? So when you're ordering parts for your trailer, again, these are your axles, okay? So I have a tandem axle, okay, dual axle, 2 of them, all right? These are each 3,500 pounds. I got that off the manufacturer's website. Okay, the next thing I had to do was you go to the internet and you look up 3,500 pound tandem leaf spring axle kits, okay? E-Trailer sells them, for instance. You have to then get your measuring tape and you measure from the center of this spring eye hole over to this spring eye hole in your old kind of, I'll call it rusty, your old leaf springs, okay? This particular set, mine, okay, is 25 1/4 inch apart. So I found 3,500 pound tandem axle suspension kit with 25 1/4 inch spring eye hole distances, okay? These are readily available. They're common on a lot of trailers. It's not like your trailer is the only one on the planet that has it. Each trailer has everything you'll need about the kit. The other thing you have to know is the size of your drums and hubs. I have 10-inch, again, tandem axle, readily available. So I got 10-inch brakes, 10-inch hubs, pretty self-explanatory. Again, I knew nothing about trailers before I got into this. I was kind of trial by fire, but like literally in like an hour of just doing some research on the manufacturer's website, looking at replacement parts, going to eTrailer.com. Again, not sponsored, obviously. I have hardly any subscribers on YouTube at this point when I'm making the video, but I found eTrailer to have pretty much everything I needed. So just make sure you're aware of that. The only other thing, guys, you have to pay attention to is the length of your shackles. Okay, again, my shackle kit that I bought with this whole kit, okay, came with like 4-inch shackles. From the center of the hole to the center of the hole, I needed 2-inch. Okay, just because of how my trailer is and the way that it moves up and down. So I had to special order those. They were like $8. Make sure, again, when you're replacing your suspension, take a look at everything. I found it cheaper to actually buy the kit that had a couple parts I didn't need, and then buy the parts on top of that I did need, than buying the manufacturer's replacement parts. So just know that you can probably save some money by buying the kits. If you have to buy a couple things one-off, that's what I did. It worked out okay. All right, let me put you guys down. I got to get cranking on this. All right, so just so I can show you guys how to put these together, fairly self-explanatory. But you're going to have 2 shackles. One goes on either side, so one on the top, one on the bottom, okay? Put your bolts through, you put your nut on the other side. Now, I read online, and I kind of like this idea to put some bit of bearing grease on these bolts. Again, these do have like plastic collars on the inside that are pretty low friction. And again, the suspension on all trailers does kind of like oscillate back and forth, which is what you want it to do. But because there is movement and you want as little friction as possible, I actually am going to just put a light coat of bearing grease on, not the threads. You don't want to coat the threads, but just the main kind of smooth shaft part of the bolt. I'm going to put some bearing grease on that and then put this together. All right, when you're done greasing up your bolt, you can slip it through one of the shackle members here, and then ultimately you can shove it through your first spring eye. Okay, now I want to have my nuts on the inside of the trailer, so I kind of have this laid out how I want it to kind of visibly be when it's on the trailer. So I put that through. I want to just hand tighten for now. One of my lock nuts. Oops! Don't forget your second shackle. Almost forgot that. You want it to be a sandwich, like let me bring the camera up. But you want it to be like that, okay? Then what you're gonna do is you're just gonna slip this on hand tight for now. It won't go very far because again, like I said, these threads are all coated. And then you have one part of your suspension done here. I'm gonna get my second bolt. Again, I'm gonna just do a light coat of grease on this. Again, you don't want to goop it on, guys. You just want a nice kind of film over the bolt. So when you're done, it's not going to be crazy, okay? All right, you're going to get your equalizer. Equalizer is going to go through here like this. All right. We're going to put that through, and then we're going to hand tighten the bolt on the other side, all right? All right, guys, we got one side done. I'm going to knock out the other side real quick, and then we're going to start bolting this up with the trailer, okay? All right, so again, when you're tightening these down, you want to make them snug, but not tight, all right? You make them kind of snug them down, back them off a quarter turn. You want this to be able to kind of be a little like free to move up and down, like a 1/16 of an inch left to right, okay? So we're gonna tighten these down now. When I get done, I'll show you what I mean. All right, so again, see right now, I have these all tightened down. You can see where the bolts kind of stick out where they're supposed to. That's what they're called, shackle nuts. Again, just threads kind of barely starting to come through the other side of the bolt. I might tighten them down one more turn, but again, this needs to be able to move freely, okay? Your suspension articulates, it goes up and down, so you want to be able to move this freely. A slight little wiggle room back and left. My arm is doing it more than this is. Probably have like a 32nd of an inch of wiggle room there. Again, not too tight. We want it to freely move, guys, okay? These bolts, again, they're lock nuts. They're not going to back off in vibration. If you don't trust me, take your trailer for a test drive. Check them afterwards. They'll still be tight. Okay, we've gotten our suspension all tightened down. Everything, all the shackles are nice and they can move freely. They got a little bit of play in them, exactly how we want it. That's ready to rock and roll. Now, the one thing I will caution you all on is that when you're bolting your brakes to your axles, you can look up your torque specs. You do want to use a torque wrench where you can. I think mine are 50 foot-pounds. But that, as well as the U-bolts, okay? The U-bolts are, again, what bolts your leaf spring suspension to your axle. Those have a torque rating typically between 45 and 70 foot-pounds. I will caution you guys and say this. If you really want to make sure you use a torque wrench, which you should, you probably need to install your U-bolts and your brakes while the axles are down, because honestly, I found that getting a torque wrench on the other side when I did it bolted up to the trailer already, it didn't work. I had to just use my hand torque wrench to kind of guesstimate all 4 bolts, for instance, were 70 foot-pounds for my U-bolt. All right, so just one other thing, just to caution you again, in case any of you are newbies like I was and trying to figure this out. The width of your suspension might not be synonymous with the section of your trailer this bolts to. So let me get under here and show you what I mean, okay? So the width, again, of my suspension is not as wide as where this bolts up in here. This is actually wider, okay, than my spring eyes on my trailer. Now, what you can do, and excuse the angle here, but what I've been doing is how it came from the factory is go out and get yourself some washers, okay? Use these washers to space out on the left and right side your suspension. And again, you don't need it to be super snug. You want to have like a 16th inch of play. So use the appropriate amount of washers. I'll try to get an angle of that when I install one here as an example. But again, just make sure you're aware of that. You don't want it slopping around back and forth, especially on an aluminum trailer, okay? It's bad for business when it comes to aluminum. It's not as strong as steel. Just heads up on that, guys. This bolt, I ordered this off of Amazon. Actually, it's a grade 8 bolt. The reason why I like this bolt was it has the smooth shaft portion of this, which when it's inside of my equalizer here, my suspension, it's only smooth on smooth. Again, you don't want to have threads in that. There's a plastic collar that sits inside of all these spring eye holes. You don't want to have threads in there, it'll shoot up. All right, again, I am going to grease my bolt. And then, like I said, on the other side, I had to use actually 3 washers for each spring eye connection where the suspension connects to my trailer. I had 1 on the outside and 2 on the inside like this. Okay, and the bolt going through it. Again, just a little bit of wiggle room inside the trailer rail. I also put grease on the face of the washers. Might have not been necessary, but I want everything to be as low friction as possible. Again, I'm just thinking longevity of parts at this point. But again, you are going to want to just lubricate with the bearing grease the flat portion of the bolt, as well as I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the face of the washer that's going to face and touch my equalizer here, okay? So let's get that done. Let's put this up into the frame hole and let's tighten it down. All right, and just like that, we've got our leaf springs bolted in. I just kind of placed a brake there for now. I'll come back and show you guys that in a minute. But honestly, I think that's like the hardest part, just because some of these shackle bolts, again, these lock nuts are like, they're very hard to put on. They are never coming off again unless you hit them with an impact gun or you use a cutoff wheel. But let me show you the washers up in the cross member, or the frame rail rather here. So you can see up in here, again, got 1 washer on the inside right here, 2 washers on the outside just to fill that space. It's got a little bit of wiggle room. But again, it's not enough wiggle room. It's going to cause any issues. If you can find, again, just a number of washers to make that make it snug, but not so snug that it can't move around. All right, that's kind of the goal there. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bolt our brakes on. Again, these are pretty self-explanatory. There's 4 holes on your axle. You got 4 bolts there, threads to thread onto. You just shove it on. Again, The magnet goes in the bottom like this, shove it on. And I did get new hardware. Again, those are lock nuts. They go in the back, 50 foot-pounds. Torque them down, you're ready to rock and roll. And the last thing to go on is the wheel hubs, which we'll get to here in 1 minute. All right, and just like that, we got our brakes all torqued down, nice and tight. I've got to come back and still tighten down just the spring eye bolts. Again, I'll show you guys that, but it's the same thing as the shackle bolts, okay? Again, you want to make them snug, but so that the suspension can still move around, articulate, etc. So brakes are done. I'm gonna tighten down the spring eye bolts. Again, I'll show you that. And then the last thing to go on, actually the last two things to go on, we've got to hook in the suspension to the axle with our U-bolts. So I'll do that actually next. And after that, we're gonna shove our hubs on, our wheel hubs, our wheel bearings. And then honestly, you're done. You tighten everything down, you put your tires on. But again, there's a couple steps here that you want to make sure you keep following this for, because when you put your wheel hubs on, for instance, you do not tighten those down. You hand snug them down, back them off like a quarter turn. You put your cotter pin through and call it a day. Plus then I actually have to install my bearing buddies. It's again, it's these things right here. Those things are great because again, they make lubricating the axles and the bearings very easy after the fact. So let's finish slugging this stuff down, and on to the next thing is going to be our U-bolts for our suspension. All right, later in the day, and it is hot. As you can see, I'm probably pouring sweat right now. Everything's tightened down. So again, brakes are all torqued down. All my spring eye bolts, the 3 grade 8 bolts, all torqued down. Now, again, when you tighten these down, they don't have to be so tight you can't move them. So again, these are tight. I can't move it with one finger, right? But a little bit of pressure, I can move it back and forth, all right? It's snug, and snug is what you want. All right, the next thing we have to do is put our U-bolts onto the suspension and hook the axles up to the suspension. I already did one side of it, just to kind of get ahead of the game here. So a couple things I'll point out to you. Again, there's a hole in the center of this perch here. That lines up with a bump, okay? This little black bump right here. You can see that little black bump that sticks up. It's part of the leaf spring, okay? It's got to go in a hole there. And then the axle, okay, has a perch that's welded on. This is your perch, okay? And there's a hole in the axle. Let me see if I can get it on camera. There we are. Right in there, and that's where the bolt on the bottom of the leaf spring, that's how you know that your leaf spring is lined up. Now also, when you are tightening down your U-bolts, okay, put your lock washer on, then your nut, obviously. I tighten them all down by hand first. And then when you put your wrench on them, you want to tighten them down just a little bit at a time, all right? So it's a nice even tightening the whole way around. All of your threads, okay, should be about the same length of all the bolts. You don't want to have it tweaked to one side. If it tweaked to one side, you could break something in the future. All right, that's dangerous. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to kind of get the camera set up here. I'm going to do the other side on camera so you can see all these things I'm talking about, and we'll get wrenching. All right, so we're going to do this side. You can see there. That's the bolt, okay, that holds your leaves together. That goes in the hole of the perch, okay? So there should be, you'll know if it's not lined up because this won't sit flush. So when you lift this up, okay, there, you should sit flush like that, okay? So you know that the nut on the bottom of the leaf springs is in the perch hole, okay? The same goes on top. This little button right here, that goes in the center of the mount for the top, right? So I'm gonna put you guys down. Let's get wrenching. All right, you can see everything, all right, is nice and flush, okay? Perch is sitting flush. You got the hole lined up there, everything's nice and hand tight. And then, sorry for all the sweat, we can go ahead and snug everything down. Now again, these call for between, I think, 50 and like 70 foot-pounds, 75 foot-pounds of torque. I always go on the high end just to be safe. The other thing, guys, to remember is I would highly recommend putting all this back together, torquing it down, take the trailer for like a 5 to 10 mile drive, come back and check all your torques just to make sure everything stayed nice and tight, all right? Let me get these torqued down, and then the next thing we have to do is put the wheel hubs on. All right, awesome. Everything is nice and tightened down right now. All that's left now is the wheel hubs and bearings, and then putting the tires back on, obviously, and going for a test drive. So everything is nicely tightened down to about 70 foot-pounds on both sides. Obviously this side's completely done. Now again, I actually am putting on new light, trailer lights also around most of the trailer. I may or may not shoot that on a separate video showing you guys how to wire it, but wiring trailer lights is pretty easy. Power ground. The rear lights have a signal for the turn signal where it kind of grounds on and off, which makes it blink, obviously. But anyway, all right, so next things we have to do here is we're going to grease the axles, and then we're going to put the wheel bearings back on. So this part right here, you want to put some grease on this before you put your wheel hubs and bearings back on. This red and tacky grease from Lucas Oil. Very good reviews, made in America, pretty good stuff. So I want to slather up the axles here, and then we're going to shove the hubs back on. Now, again, my hubs I bought with bearings pre-packed, pre-lubed. Probably will put a little extra grease of my own in there just to kind of have enough in there. It's better to have probably too much than too little. You don't want to put so much in that it can't breathe, otherwise it will overheat. I'm going to put a little extra on, okay? So let's hit this, and then we're going to shove our wheel hubs on. Here we go. Again, you don't want to go too crazy with this, but you do want to have a nice thick coat on here. Again, you do kind of hard to put too much on this. You're gonna go all the way around. Again, it doesn't matter if you get a little bit on the threads, guys, because you put a cotter pin on the other side of the castle nut that holds the hub on. And again, that only gets hand tight, all right? You're not twerking this thing down. It's gotta be able to spin freely. Otherwise you build up too much friction. So I'm putting just a nice coat of grease all over this. Don't get it on your brake, obviously. Just like that. That's all you gotta do. All right, so I shoved just a bit more bearing grease on this bearing on the inside there, and shove some more on the back side here. And again, guys, you don't need to go crazy. Again, mine came pre-packed, but a little extra can't hurt, okay? And then literally all you have to do is just slide it onto this, okay? I want to put you guys down though because there's a couple little tricks I want to make sure that everybody knows when you put this back on. So just give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right. So then next thing you want to do is just slide the wheel hub on. Now this front bearing is not pressed in, all right? It will fall out. So you might want to keep a thumb here. You don't want that to fall out and hit the ground and get full of debris. Debris leads to friction, which leads to bearing failure, okay? So kind of keep your thumb there. You just want to slide this on, and then you'll see it just kind of pushes on just like so, okay? Now, hopefully when you took your trailer apart, you kept your washer because, again, they do not come with new washers, okay? So you're going to need your washer. You're also going to need the old castle nut that came off. And you're going to need your cotter pin, okay? So again, apologies you can't see my face, but next thing that goes on here is your washer. I'm just going to throw a quick layer of bearing grease on this. Again, just friction's bad. So any way you can cut down on friction, you want to do it. This slides on. Just like so, okay? And then ultimately, this is what I was saying earlier, doesn't matter if you get some grease on these threads here, because this thing really just kind of hand tighten down, all right? Because you want to be able to, if it's too tight, you'll overheat the bearings. It's not what you want. So you might need a set of channel locks just to kind of help it get going here. All right, so right there is tight, okay? When it's tight, we're gonna back it off a little bit. It's about how loose or about how tight you want it. Tight, back it off a little bit. Put your cotter pin through the hole, and you're done, okay? All right, then once the cotter pin's in, you just want to grab the tabs and bend them over. Get your hammer. Just like that, your hub's on. Brake's a little snug. I'll have to back the brake off, which I'll show you here in a minute. But it's nice and on there now. And if you guys have it, which my trailer did come with it, we have these bearing buddies here. Again, these just kind of line them up like that. All right, you get your mallet. All right, you hammer in until it's flush, and then usually they have little rubber caps which are inside. So I will show you the ones on the other side just so you can see what I'm talking about. You want to keep dust out of them. These little dust covers right here. Okay, I think these are 2-inch dust covers. If you guys do more, Amazon sells them. They're really freaking cheap. Pick those up. So yeah. All that's left now, once I finish the other side, is just to put the wheels and tires on. Technically, this thing's drivable. So I'll push you guys down. I'm going to put the other hub on, tighten it down, and then I will throw some tires on because we need to adjust the brakes before you drive. So let me get this last one done, and I'll talk to you guys in 1 minute. All right, look at that. Another whole side is done. Everything is torqued down. Brakes are 50 foot-pounds. The U-bolts on the suspension, again, about 70 foot-pounds. And again, all of the spring eye bolts and the shackle bolts, okay? You make them snug, but not so tight that they bind up the suspension. The suspension needs to be able to move, okay? The only thing we have left to do is throw the tires back on. You got to adjust the brakes, which I guess I'll go ahead and record that too, just to show you, and then take it for a test drive. And then once you get back from the test drive, again, I would come back, check all the torque and everything one more time. We did use lock washers and nylon lock bolts and nuts, rather, but you never know, right? So I'm gonna adjust the brakes real quick. Let's get that done. Let's take it for a test drive. And again, the tires and wheels, you want to torque down to about 100 foot-pounds, okay? So know your torque specs when you're putting things back together. All right, it feels good to see this right now. I've got tires and wheels back on. I also got all new lug nuts. They'll look really nice. I wish the wheels were in better condition, but maybe we can find some new wheels at some point. So last thing again is we have to adjust the brakes. So the best way you want to make sure you can hear the brakes. So when I turn that, you can see it spins a little bit, then comes to a stop. All right, I already did the other sides. I'm going to loosen both of these two up just a little bit. That's almost perfect, honestly. You want to have a little bit of drag. That's just surface layer drag that'll kind of wear off in the first couple miles of driving. But the other two on the other side, again, are just, they're a little bit looser. So I'm going to loosen these two. And regardless, I wanted to show you guys how to do this, right? So for those of us that don't have a lift to do this on our trailer brakes, it's easy, but it's kind of a pain because I'm a tall guy and I have to get laid down flat on the ground to do this, okay? But let me just show you. So on your brakes, there will be two vents here, okay? And these come with little plugs. Just pop those out with the flathead screwdriver. Inside of here, there's a little corkscrew, okay? And you put your flathead screwdriver in. I have a flashlight in the other hole over here so I can kind of see it when I'm laying flat on the ground. If you lift up on it, it makes the brakes tighter, okay? And you push down on it, it makes them a little bit looser. So the other side, I actually had to tighten them up. So I was screwing a little screw up. This side, I'm going to push down a little bit, just so you guys can, again, visualize what that looks like. I should have done this on my new brakes, but I have the old rusty brakes over here I can show to you right now. When these are installed, okay, on the actual trailer, this is the bottom. Talking about this thing right here. Let me get out of the light. This thing right there, okay? See it has little teeth? What you're doing is you're coming through the other side. You pop this tab out. Let's see if I can actually get it out. Oh, I can't. It's too rusted on. But you're just using your, again, you're using your flathead on the whole side just to kind of lift it. Okay, a couple turns, sometimes not even a couple turns, like half a turn, maybe adjust your brakes perfectly, okay? So it sounds like it's really complex, but I did the other side pretty quickly. Once I got my flashlight in there and I could see what I was doing, it actually turns very easily, so don't worry about that. But again, you want to have a little bit of drag. I'll show you the other side just so you can see the kind of drag I'm going for right now. And there's multiple videos out there on YouTube, pick one that you like, but you can kind of hear it. Okay, so it spins freely, but it has a little bit of drag, all right? Both of these two tires on this side, they're both pretty similar. The other two are a little bit more snug. Again, probably quarter of a turn, just crack them a little bit looser, pop the plugs back in the holes. And then honestly, if this thing was wired and had the brake legs working, I could hook it up and take it for a test drive. I want to get the lights working, again, just to be safe. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. If you watched any of my old stuff, I started off as like a fitness channel, and I'm still going to be doing fitness stuff, but I'm also just really big into DIY. I don't know what order this trailer video is coming out in, but I'm also doing my entire basement myself. So we built the house, but the basement was never finished. So I'm doing everything from literally insulating the walls to framing the basement, running the electrical. I'm doing a full bath down there, so I'm going to be doing some plumbing with an above grade pump. So I'm not going to be jackhammering up my floor. So that's probably something unique that you guys might like. But if you did like this video, guys, again, please subscribe. Please give me the thumbs up. Please comment below if you have any questions. If I missed anything that maybe you just kind of say, hey, dumb question, but just feel free to ask. There are no dumb questions, honestly. If you haven't done this before, it was very confusing. But again, guys, please subscribe. I really appreciate the support. Until I see you again, get in the gym, take care of yourselves, and freaking live your dream. I'll catch you next time. All right, Myrtle Beach vacation 2023. The kids' first time in a motorhome and the first time at Lakewood Campground. I hope you guys love it. Daddy loves you, mommy loves you, all right? And then after Daddy just spent the last 2 weeks of his life till 3 in the morning rebuilding this gigantic piece of crap, but hopefully it's worth it. back of the CRV is literally packed from the bottom of it to the roof, and the entire front is packed as well with the doggies, the kids, and the family.
Very long drive, guys.
Oh.
No, it's actually morning time. I told him we're not getting to the beach till nighttime.
Right. Oh. We're taking a video just because we're going to commemorate the Lakewood trip and the poof and the fluff.
No.
And the mommy. And the daddy. All right, here we go.